Good evening and welcome to the Velocity of Now second hour with me, your host, Thomas Sheridan, here on September 1st, 2016, the first show after the summer break. And welcome back to the second hour, especially all the new people who discovered my work from my recent appearance on Coast to Coast, which I was told had a listenership of 16 million people, the biggest show I've done so far. And it was a wonderful 2 hours spent with George Newry, and have a listen to that if you haven't heard it. We spoke about everything from psychopaths in business place, psychopaths in politics, to my new book, The Druid Code, fairies, and all kinds of other interesting things. And it was a great 2 hours, although it was very strange getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning to do an interview that was on late at night in the US, but it was well worth it. And a lot of new people have discovered my work, and it's been a long time coming, but then again, I never asked, and so it was great to get on there finally, and hopefully I'll get on there again. Even if I don't, I'm honoured and delighted I got on the biggest late night show in the world, probably on radio. So, and to get that on to get George Newry on 2 hours on my first time there was just wonderful. So, the second part of the show tonight, I want to talk about recent events without naming names, but you know who I'm talking about. It's recently come out that someone in the alt scene and very involved in the Palestinian issues has been called out by another person in the alt scene who's also involved in the Palestinian issue, something that doesn't interest me at all, really. But as usual, when these things happen, it fires up a ferocious smear campaign. And the people in the alternative movement, the truthers, wherever you want to call them, they become almost like, a lot of them, not all of them, of course, but a lot of them become like salivating psychotic dogs on the warpath. And when you see it happening and you see it unfolding in real time on your newsfeed on Facebook and on your Twitter page, you can definitely see how something like the Holocaust happened, or something like the mass murders of Indians happened in America, or things like the mass Bolsheviks killings in Russia, the Chinese Cultural Revolution, Pol Pot, and so on, right up to like mass killings and suicides by cults like Jonestown and the Solar Temple. Now, it's when you watch it and you're not involved, it's two things. It's disturbing, but it's also kind of fascinating. And it's also useful because immediately it allows me to see who should be blocked on my Facebook page, and many others are blocking these people too. Now, if one person shares a link saying, did you hear about so-and-so? He's been, exposed as a disinfo shill or something like that. What do you think? Obviously, you don't block them, although they really shouldn't be sharing the link unless it has real hard evidence in it. And of course, as usual, this latest round has no hard evidence in it yet. I'm on the fence about it, but my default position on this is the ones who use their websites to attack first are usually the guilty ones. The ones who use their websites to attack first are usually the guilty ones, because they're immediately trying to create a diversion from something else. Always remember that. Point in people sharing something like that if it didn't have real evidence in it, because it's kind of childish and irresponsible, because it's kind of selfish, because as well. But I wouldn't block them. The ones I would block would be the ones who would instantly believe it and then go on these psychotic rampages, and they will pull out all kinds of nonsense to try and back this up. And you can see them almost like in a feeding frenzy. There was one bitch the other day, I was watching her. The article was posted, and then she wasn't happy enough posting it on her wall. She had to go on a tour of the internet and a tour of Facebook, posting it everywhere. And it was like you could see it was actually feeding her. It was actually giving her energy. And we're going to talk about the spiritual implications of that in relation to things like archons and demons in a little while. But first, I want to describe the pathology, the behavior beforehand. It was insatiable, and she wasn't the only one. And you go look on her page, and she's the usual toxic bitch, truther type. She chain smokes, probably all these links to how cannabis cures like everything. So it smokes GMO weed constantly and all those kinds of things. And the usual all conspiracies are true. no conspiracy is wrong, and it instantly jumps on. These are very dangerous and very frightening people because they're so completely mentally insane that in the normal discourse in human society, they'd be completely ignored. But on Facebook, if they can find enough other lunatics, and on the rest of the internet, other similar type of lunatics, they will actually form a collective in the belief that somehow they're part of some kind of great social shift. In reality, if they get 500 of them together, they'd still be 500 oddballs and lunatics in regular society. So they have no power as such. Now, but when they do this, it's a feeding psychotic frenzy. It allows you to immediately identify ones you should never have on your friends list because they will do the same to you. They will do the same to you. They don't care about the particular person they're smearing or the issue at hand. They just want to attack. They need it. They need to be part of something. And when this piece of shit had run out of links and all ridiculous things like a YouTube testimony by a woman who, for all we know, could be a complete bunny boiler, who had a crush on the guy or dated him, and maybe he fucked her, and he didn't want to be with her, and then so because she probably found out she was nuts. They make videos on the internet. I've seen that done a few times. And these internet videos are shared as if they're like, this is the word of an honourable person. When it's 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, it's the words of a bunny boiler or some kind of like dumped lunatic. And so these kind of things are shared. The irony was, because this person was involved in Palestinian issues, they were actually pulling up Jewish Zionist sites to attack them, and yet these same maniacs all claim to be anti-Zionist, and here they are sharing Zionist websites. This is what you're dealing with. They don't care about the subject. They're just in a state of absolute psychotic frenzy. The horrible, gossipy washerwomen, both the males and the females, psychosis, no decency, the kind of people who would have been throwing Jews into the ovens at Auschwitz, would have thought nothing of, lining babies up and shooting them in Kiev or something like that. That's how they are. They want the entity inside them is hungry, and the entity inside them requires this. And again, it gets even worse. Just when it had scoured the internet looking for every kind of hate site, hate YouTube video, hate comment, every screenshot they could find about this guy, then they move on to other people in the scene, because the addiction was still raging inside them. The entity inside them was still furiously salivating and insatiable. And it got a taste of energy, and it wanted more. And there was no more on this guy, so then they go and start pulling up hate links against other people, because this is all this creature wasn't interested in. It wasn't interested in the facts. It was only interested in taking part in a wild psychic maelstrom, a firestorm of hate and vendettas against a man who never did them any personal harm. Now, this is not really worry me, but it should worry them, because basically what they've done is they've cursed themselves. There's an article I'll post below about this, and when you take part in a hate campaign to that level, a visceral hate campaign against someone who never did you any personal harm, or maybe annoyed you because you blocked them on Facebook or they disagreed. This is what I like, these truthers. All you have to do is disagree with them, and they will have vendettas that will be turned against you for all eternity. All eternity. They cannot switch off that hate switch, because the entity inside them that you can see behind their dead, empty, soulless eyes and monotonal voices, it's the only time they're alive is when they're in these wild psychotic episodes of hate and vendettas for no reason. And then if they can't find enough things, they'll make up lies. They'll tell more lies. They'll add lie upon lie. They cannot stop. They cannot help themselves, because they're not in control of themselves. The entity inside them is controlling them. Maybe it was a fibroid or something in a female type that developed consciousness and took them over. Maybe it was sexual frustration in the male type that made this sort of like non-sexual release tulpa generate inside them. Now, Carl Jung called this an autonomous complex, and it's a very interesting phenomena. People who are filled with bitterness often develop these autonomous complexes. And terrifyingly, they can even turn into tumors on the internal sexual organs that end up growing hair and teeth. They're like tumors of creatures that are unborn. They're actually trying to physically manifest. It's the most horrifying thing when you see pictures of these tumors with teeth and hair growing out of them. It's just the bitterness. It's not health. There's so much that it metastasizes. It actually, now this is not to say they get cancer. It actually grows inside them first as a kind of an entity, as an autonomous complex. But the hate and the vendetta is so strong, they will do things like they will neglect their spouses, they will neglect their own children, their own flesh and blood. They will neglect everything to push this vendetta ahead. It is the only thing they think about, along with lighting a spliff, from the moment they get up in the morning to the moment they go to sleep. They have no other lives. If they had to sleep, they cannot create from within. They cannot generate from within. They can achieve nothing. They're always playing the victim. They love feeling the victim because they always play the victim, because that allows them an excuse to show why they're failures and losers in life. And then they will, from that, everyone else is certain individuals or certain groups are the ones that are holding them back. And they don't have to do anything else in their life. They don't have to draw a drawing, paint a picture, have a relationship with their friends and peers. No, everything is devoted then to the hate campaign, because there is literally nothing else keeping the entity inside them, the autonomous complex, alive. Now, if you find yourself becoming like that, immediately stop it. If you find those people if you find someone on your Facebook page and they just can't, they have this vendetta against a person and they just can't let it go. A year later, they're just as filled with hate as they was a previous year before. Get them out of your life, because eventually they will turn on you too. And if you look at these people's life history, they have a long sense of love bombing someone, and then blaming them, even though they were the ones who did it. They were the ones who took the initiative to attack and jump ship from the other person. These people will then infect. If they don't infect you, that you will be their next target, because the entity controlling them, inside them, that piece of flesh that probably has 4 hairs and 2 teeth growing out of them, this monster inside them is now what's controlling them. And you can see the monster in them because they often talk like this. When they have monotonal voices, it's almost like the demon inside them, the entity, the archon, whatever you want to call it, is putting its hand up into its brain and operating it like a ventriloquist dummy. And it's like this, and it's very monotonal. I tell them in certain ways, they perform the same act after day, because the actual flesh golem, the flesh golem that they are now, and the autonomous complex within them, makes them do the same thing every single day, because they cannot create anything. So the same photographs will be posted every day, the same statements will be posted every day, and of course interjected or punctuated by this vendetta they have against an individual or group, which will be the only thing that actually seems in their lives they can be dynamic about. Everything else is the same. It's always a victim complex. This person's picked on me. Here's another photograph of my cat. Blah, blah, blah. It goes on. And the same thing every day. Because they're dead inside, they don't realize that this is not normal behavior for people. Watch out for these people. I've never let you guys down before. I've been watching these monsters for years. The psychopaths, the narcissistic types, the pathological narcissistic types. There's also narcissistic types that actually do, they're actually brilliant at sport and everything else. I have a problem with them because they're challenged into something that they can actually achieve. The psychopaths, the trauma vampires I've told you about, the ones who feed on your misery. There's a video I made of it that's very popular about trauma vampires. They pretend they come as the guys as people here to take care of you or to give you sympathy, but they're loving your misery and they're loving being around you and sucking it. Them, and then you have the meat golem / infected truthers or the infected types who just can't let this vendetta that they have against someone who basically did them no harm. And if there was anything was done to them, it was only in response to an initial attack by the flesh golem or the entity inside them that attacked this person, and the person defended themselves, and then that becomes they rewrite history as if to say the defensive action was the initial attack. Cults do this as well. Cults will start attacking people piecemeal, someone they're jealous of, someone they don't like on their message board. And when the person finally says, will you ever go fuck yourself, page on our website and go on a tour of the internet attacking this person, they bait them. You see, these are all, and the entity inside them, the creature inside them feeds. It feeds behind their two dead eyes and their soulless monotonal voices. Hello, I'm here. Oh, no. And it just eats, and it must eat more because they have no and their children are left half-dressed and malnourished. They generally get into relationships, if they keep the relationships, with spouses who have no personalities, so they can devote all their time to their vendettas and their hatreds. Or, they make sure that the spouse with no personality has land and money or something like that. It'd be an enabler, of course. But everything in their life is geared towards there. There's nothing else. And here's the same photograph I posted yesterday, and another version of it, and it's dead. It's dead and empty. There's nothing in there except the autonomous, toxic, bitter complex which metastasizes within every cell of its being. You know what I'm saying? This is what you're dealing with. And when these witch hunt starts up, these creatures, they emerge from the slime, the flotsam of the electromagnetic spectrum. They emerge from their empty, worthless lives, filled with bitterness, filled with hate, filled with vendettas based on nothing, because they've destroyed everyone in their lives. They've isolated themselves into a toxic, stinking rat hole. And they emerge for food, for toxins, for food, for energy. And after all of it, they're lucky if they get a peanut's worth. They're lucky if they get a peanut's worth. But it's all they can do because there's nothing else to live for. They are dead. Now, how did they get to this stage? Well, Carl Jung and Friedrich Nietzsche both said something along the lines of, do not look into hell too long, or you yourself will become hell. And this is what happens with the truthers specifically. They spend all their time being fired up into paranoid states. They're going to be arrested by FEMA. They're going to be killed by the Illuminati. A person holding his hand over one eye is an Illuminati agent hidden in kind of nonsense. They read these ridiculous websites where any woman involved in a kind of a sexual provocative dance within a video is an MK Ultra mind control slave who's a sex slave for the elites. Now, the reason why they're hung up on that is because they'll never get a woman like that. And so they have to find a way to hate them. Now, a lot of it is human nature. I mean, it'd be unfair for me to say this only happens with truthers. I mean, if you look at men who are failures in life, and they look at somebody on TV, like a guy, especially if he's from a work-class background, like a soccer player or a pop star, and he's made loads of money and he's got a beautiful women all around him, they'll say things like, look at that sleazebag. Typical begrudgery. But that's just normal begrudgery from, losers in society. But when a truther gets infected, it's something very different. Now let me tell you, I know David Icke calls them reptilians. That's because he's not very well educated and hasn't studied allegory and metaphor enough. But that's what he uses. But in reality, they're more likely to be compared to to things like angelic beings. But there is this autonomous complex that Jung identified. It is the demon that grows inside us. It is. That when you're traumatized, if you have post-traumatic stress disorder, like that movie Jacob's Ladder. Do you remember that film Jacob's Ladder? And you kept seeing these faces. That was almost like a very good allegory for the autonomous complex. The demon grows inside you, and it starts to distort your reality and makes you serve them. And you're watching the truthers are watching these videos all day. You know, Illuminati, dun, 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 they're coming to get you, chemtrail, all this stuff. They get into this kind of state of hypervigilance where everyone is out to get them. And the world is full of danger, and no one can protect them. Nobody. So they feel helpless, they feel terrified, they feel despondent, they feel like the world is crushing in on them, and there's no one to protect them. And so they desperately seek to reach out, and they reach out to truth gurus. And you know who the truth gurus are? The truth gurus start to feed they're the first drug pushers of the entity inside them. So by the time they've reached a level where they're fearful, paranoid, despondent, they think that like 10% of society are satanic pedophiles. They think, every plane that flies over is gassing them. They think that FEMA is coming to arrest them at any moment. EV, that they're, by the time they get to that level, the entity has already taken over. Now, the entity then inside them requires a regular feeding. And so then they go onto these internet radio shows, and they find these truth gurus who feed that. They confirm all this stuff for them for a donation button. That's another thing. That's cursed money. Donation money is cursed money. I know that. I remember 2 years ago when I had no job and I'd been attacked by that cult and their associates in a message forum. My book sales collapsed, and I was going through a difficult time. But I was still able to. I got a part-time job working in a store, so I had enough to pay for my income, and I lived very frugally. But I had not. What happened then at that time was my internet bills had come in, and because my website was so popular, I had the paradox of having a website, right? A website that was generating the same number of hits and bandwidth usage as a famous star, but yet my income was minimum wage. So I simply could not afford it. So I asked people to send in money because I was using my book sales previous to that to pay for internet charges. And that was the only time I took donations. And the total amount I got was €212 over about 3 months. And as soon as I got a proper job and my finances picked up again, I took that €212 and I went around and gave it to homeless people as cash on the street because it was cursed money. And I had to immediately transfer it into decent money. And that's why a lot of these internet guru and radio show types that live off donations, who think you should pay them for being on just talking confirmation bias all the time and without actually producing anything in terms of a tangible product. You're supposed to just pay them for it. And that's dirty money. They're all screwed. They'll all go downhill. They'll all have to haunt you because no good comes from it. It's not energetically generated. But anyway, so they listen to those and they get their fix. It becomes a drug thing. It becomes a drug, right? And what happens to every druggie or alcoholic, right? It's always the same. It goes from 3 pints to 7 pints to 20 pints to a bottle of whiskey to brake fluid. Same with a junkie. It goes from 1 GMO skunk joint, 5 GMO skunk joints, 20 GMO skunk joints. It never stops. It never stops. And so this is the same. The autonomous complex is now a self-regulating and self-independent entity inside them. It's got its hand up inside the skull of the truther and it's operating it, right? Now, all junkies, they use their drugs. If they're on smackheads, they have a regular medication of smack. But the autonomous complex inside them, like the junkie, wants the ultimate score. The grade A drug, right? The class A truth. That's what they need. That's what the entity inside them wants. And class A truth is for someone in the alternative media or the truth scene to be exposed as a shill or something else. They don't care if they're a pedophile. We've seen that recently. They don't care if they're a criminal who've been in a they don't care if they're anything. They just want to believe that they're somehow kind of a disinfo shill. Disinfo shill is looking for them as the class A drug of the infected truther. Now, then the pedophilia matters. Then the pedophilia matters. But it'll not be pedophilia, right? If they will find a video of this guy and a sexy young girlfriend who's an adult involved in consensual behavior and not even sexual, not even like anything, right? The bunny boilers who are obsessed with him will claim that he's a pornographer pushing that out there or something like that. And the male truthers who are all jealous because they can't get a sexual release. Because remember, demonic entities are drawn into they need sexual release constantly. That's why so many truthers end up pedophiles into pedophile pornography. It first begins with the whole thing of like, go and expose them pedophiles. You know, satanic pedophiles. They have no problem with Christian pedophiles, by the way. Christian cult pedophiles, no problem with that. It's a satanic pedophiles. I'm going to expose them in Hampstead. Right, I'll constantly. Then they start sharing lurid stories of sexual abuse of children, right? And that becomes an addiction to them, and that leads to, you know yourself, a well-known pedomanic in the UK who was obsessed with this stuff recently committed suicide about 5 months ago because the cops knocked on his door and found child porn on his PC. That's what happened. That's how the entity was feeding on pedophile pornography, pedophile stories, lurid satanic pedophile stories, and then the entity inside them wanted more and more until the stupid fucker had child porn on his computer. This is what happens. They don't know how to relax. They don't know how to switch the fucking button off. Because you can always tell someone who's not infected because they will post stories about things and then they will tell jokes, post music videos, post football if you're into soccer or sports, post comedy show clips, have a laugh. They're the ones who can look at the stuff, see the world is run by fucking psychopaths, see it's all fucked up, but then they go on with their lives. They're not infected. You understand? The ones who are infected can't shut it off. And everything, every form of human sexuality is twisted then. So an adult person, if they don't like them, is doing adult sexual things, is automatically a pedophile. This is how they think. But meanwhile, someone who was in a child cult pedophile for 27 years, they're brave. This is their logic as well. Entity inside you, your logic makes no sense. You contradict yourself from one minute to the next. So anyway, they have no sense of humor. You tell them a joke, you go, not funny. Not funny. The world's run by satanic pedophiles. Satanic pedophiles. How can you joke? How can you tell jokes and play music videos and have a good time in the world when I say thank you, file? That's what I like. You must be a satanic pedophile because you tell jokes. You're not like me. You're not in a state of fucking hypervigilance all the time. Can't enjoy live on 10 GMO spliffs a day on the PC. Satanic pedophiles. Theme accounts. And then they go out into the real life, right, with this mentality, and they post that, you know, that meme they show up the group of like idiots looking at them with a glass. It's a party, and this is what happens when you bring real world issues up in front of zombies, and they're looking at the person like, what the fuck? And everyone's going, oh, I recognize that look. You recognize that look, not because you went in and you said to them something rationally like, I'm not happy about these GMO things. They're a bit weird. You didn't say it like a bit annoying, a bit disturbing. You didn't do it like that. You rushed in and you went, the world is run by lizards. The lizards are coming and 9/11 was in there. And then that's why they look at you like that. That's why you recognize the look. You didn't approach them rationally. How many videos and talks have I given about how to not do it? And you still do it the wrong way. You still charge in this messianic crusade of truth and it blows up in your face. So then they become like cult members, and they are cult members. There's nothing for them in the real world, right? The only place they can exist then is in the internet, right? So they go into the internet, and they see in the video I made about scrying, especially if they're using their mobile phones or tablets, that is a black scrying screen. They're in direct communication with the digital jinn. Direct communication, okay? So the entity inside them, the truth entity that can't switch itself off and needs to feed constantly, then with the digital jinn on the other side, and then it really fucking goes bad. You think it's bad before, it really goes bad. That's when they end up with child porn on their PC. That's when they end up committing suicide. That's when they end up like the fucking idiot who wanted to kill people in Connecticut at that school where the kids were all shot because he said it was an inside job to bring highlighter. This is when you're on the computer, when you see people being gummed down in cold blood, and you're going, ha ha ha, crisis actor. And here's the photo, the same photo of the girl with the phone in her hand. You are fucking infected. You have lost your humanity. You are no longer a human being. What the fuck is wrong with you? That you could look at a bombing or a shooting on the other side of the world and start to see people with their legs missing, bodies on the ground in body bags, and start making fun of them because I'm a truther and I'm into infinite love. I choose love. Oh, look, she's faking it. Oh yeah, our guts are hanging out. Ha ha ha. See it in the next episode of Friends, bitch. This is the kind of things I've seen. Here's your fucking look. I'm not saying false flags don't happen. I know they happen. I grew up in fucking Ireland during the Troubles. I can tell you that a large number of the bombs and shootings were actually done by the security forces and blamed on either the IRA or the loyalists. I know they happen. But I know the victims were real. The crisis actors are the politicians and the fuckers in the security forces who plant these bombs when they are. I'm not saying they all are, but it happens now and again. We know it happens again. I mean, the first one I definitely believed in was the bombing of the train station in Verona. I think it was in 1980. That was blamed on the Brigate Rosse, and that was actually all the Italian security services, all Freemasons tied up with Propaganda Due. I know that, and there's been lots of other ones, okay? We know that false flags exist, but crisis actors are not the same thing. See, what happens is the demon inside them is so determined to prove that it's a false flag that when the evidence for it being a false flag is not available or runs out, then they move on to making fun of people who are having their guts shot up or their brains hanging out or are being taken away in body bags. And a lot of this has to do, then the truther is isolated indoors. So they see like what happened in Nice, right? And they think that a shootout scene in real life should be like the Hollywood movies. In the Hollywood movies, the guns go, and they sound like bombs going off the handguns, right? In real life, a handgun sounds like this. Pop, 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 pop. That's what a real handgun sounds like, right? Like a handgun to me. Because they're comparing it to something they saw Bruce Willis use in Die Hard. It's like the cowboy movies where the old pistol, and you see there'd be the guy on top of a mountain, and your man pointing a pistol at him, and he shoots him with a pistol, and he hits him at the top of a mountain. That wouldn't happen in real life because about 10 feet out of the barrel, the bullet starts to bend. You can't shoot at anyone at a distance with a pistol, and they think that's real. That's why the bullets. I'm not going to go into it, but forget about that, right? Yes, of course, false flags happen, but that's not the same thing as the crisis actors. No one was killed in them, and I've had the people say this. Are you telling me that no one was killed in the Bataclan? No one was killed in the Bataclan. No one was killed in Nice. No one was killed in Nice. They actually say this. They're all crisis actors. And this insanity is also fed by intelligence, and for all their issues with the intelligence service and disinfo shields, ironically enough, they are the main disinfo shields. Do you remember the 9/11 thing? The whole thing, no planes. That no planes thing couldn't have come from anywhere else other than the intelligence services, who leaked it in there to discredit any investigation into, shall we say, anomalies surrounding 9/11. So the people sharing that and then calling others disinfo shields are themselves the ultimate disinfo shield. How about that? Take that to the bank, motherfucker. Because once the autonomous complex, the entity inside them, has taken over, logic goes out the window. It just needs more and more hysteria. Now, when this show is over, I hope you take notes. And then the next time something like a massive flip and someone is being exposed as a shill, instead of getting involved, observe the behavioral dynamics. And you will get the fright of your life. Because when you step outside and look at what's going on from outside, you completely understand that the people in that meme, you know, the one when you bring up real life issues to zombies and they look at you like this, you completely understand why they looked like that at the people saying it. The same when there's a major terrorist attack and the false flag brigade show up and they show these images of the same girl with the phone and all this stuff, and they're all laughing about, ha ha ha, crisis actor. Sit back as a neutral and watch it. So disturbed by what you're seeing. This is not normal behavior for human beings. Because it's not normal. They're not normal human beings. The same ones that are fired up by the false flag crisis actor thing, and the same ones who are fired up by the Zinfo Shills things, and they're also the ones who when Israel attacks the West Bank or whatever, they fill the internet full of pictures of babies with their brains hanging out. This is all energy harvesting for the union, the marriage that their autonomous complex has entered into with the digital jinn. It is a feedback loop. The digital jinn online and themselves are sharing this an energetic release in order to nourish each other. See? Watch it. I don't lie to you about these things. I don't make this shit up. Look up autonomous complex. It's real. Look up stories about people. Well, look, long before the internet came along, people used to go out and kill people or do mass shootings based on this idea that something on the TV told them to do it. Now, I'm not adverse to the idea that there could have been, like, you know, Manchurians who were triggered by things on the TV. Times out of 100, it was mental illness. And they started to believe what was on TV. Now, the truth movement, a lot of it is mental illness. The belief in the reptilians comes directly from the TV show V. That's where it comes from. It comes from nowhere else. There's nothing else in history to do that. What about all the reptilians? Oh, there's the snakes and reptoids everywhere. Sure. That's called metaphor and allegory. There's also mermaids everywhere, minotaurs, unicorns, lions. They're everywhere. Look, and they're probably even more abundant than serpents. But they watch. That's where that comes from. It comes from the TV show V. That's where it comes. It has no other origin out there. None. Serpents are a symbol of wisdom. Serpents are a symbol of the emergence from the psychic progression, the subconscious, the psyche, rising up into the conscious mind. The serpent in the Garden of Eden was giving man free will. Do you want to stay here and be a robot at the mercy of this bully? Or do you want to go out and make your own way in the world? And God punished them for having, well, Jehovah, the Tetragrammaton, punished them for having free will. It's very deep, okay? It's very deep. And so people used to watch TV shows in the past and actually go out and kill, like a man, and he probably, and I have that man Chapman who shot John Lennon is a Manchurian or a killbot, and that's why he's never been released from prison. I'm almost sure that he's a killbot. But at the same time, too, I think he was activated too soon or something, because what happened was, the night before he killed John Lennon, he took part in what was called a satanic mass. I believe it was a processed church thing. And then he went and killed Lennon, and he based it on the characters in the book The Catcher in the Rye. That was the trigger. Yes, see, this is why, as much as I'm slagging off people who see Illuminati symbols everywhere and all this stuff and think all culture is MK Ultra stuff, this stuff still has a profound effect on us. The problem with the truthers and the truth gurus, except me, who's not a truth guru, but I'm here to help you. I'm not here to feed off you. I don't. Is that symbolism or allegory? And if they do, it's negative. Like, for instance, they will say things like, such and such is invoking Kali. And they think Kali's all about evil and slaughter. And so Kali's going to, Kali, Madonna invoking Kali in a video means that the Illuminati are going to start rounding us up and decapitating us with FEMA guillotines on trains. It doesn't mean that at all. It means that she's aware, or people, or handlers, are aware of the power of these archetypes. And that's not even what Kali means. Kali means restoration, necessary, like pruning. The Kali spirit is evoked by doing things like pruning a rose bush or pruning a fruit tree, so you get more fruit. So energy isn't wasted in unnecessary limbs on the plants. Well, Kali's the same thing with society in general. The ones that are no longer serving must be removed. Kali will. This brings me to what will be the most profound part of tonight's broadcast. Even though there's no actual being as Kali, okay? You don't have to be, you can be an atheist and still believe this stuff. What Kali represents is aspects of the subconscious. All these things do, okay? Just like the serpent in Genesis represents the emergence of free will, in the emergence of the individual. Kali represents the destruction of things that have served their purpose. And this is what's happening with your truth movement at the moment. Kali is coming in with her cleaver and she's cutting them all down. All of them. And then she's taking the heads and she's throwing the heads into the ground of all your truth leaders, your truth gurus, all the wild loony bins, all the other people, all the mad truthers, throwing them, all the pedomanics, the rest of them, scattering their heads on the ground like seeds. And what Kali's representing is they're no use to anyone anymore. They're no use to society. They're no use to conspiracy theory. They're no use to Fortean issues. They're no use even to themselves. So Kali is hacking them down one by one. And the day will come when Kali will come looking for you. Come looking for me. Come looking for everyone. And there's no point in running away because Kali will catch you. Kali always runs faster than you, and her cleavers and her knives and her daggers are more swift than even your thoughts. And let me tell you, my friend, when Kali emerges before you, put your head out and allow yourself to be decapitated. Because what she's doing is she's pruning the rose bush, the fruit tree of your subconscious, so a new you can emerge. The autonomous complex is in the head that she's planted in the ground as a seed to grow somewhere else. But the autonomous complex is now out of you. And the best way to do this is to have no gurus and no beliefs. And people say things like, oh, when it was exposed that he did this, that, and the other, and he wasn't the great truth hero I thought he was, I'm gutted. I feel sick. You feel sick because Kali has cut your head off, but you've been liberated. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this first show back. See you on Sunday for the Sunday sermon, the 4th, and then again for another 2-hour show, hopefully, next Thursday. And look after yourself. Look after your loved ones. Take pleasure in simple things. Take pleasure in the ordinary. Stay away from toxic people who have vendettas. Stay away from people who eat your energy or seek to eat your energy, and fill yourself with the ones who fill your life with creativity, joy, and they respect you. Good night, and fuck them if they can't take a joke. Oh, and my website is www.streetdruid.net. I still have the thomassheridanarts.com site, but I won't be updating that anymore. That's just simply an archive now I'm maintaining. All new articles will go to streetdruid.net. And feck them if they can't take a joke.